You hand your toddler the iPad.
You tell yourself, just 20 minutes. And for 20 minutes, your house is quiet. The laundry gets moved. The email gets answered. You drink half a cup of coffee while it is still warm. And then the 20 minutes ends, and you take the iPad away. And what happens next? You have seen 100 times. The screaming, the throwing, the complete and total collapse. As if you have taken away the one thing keeping them alive. And you stand there thinking, what did I just do to my child? Here is what I need you to hear today. The iPad is not the villain in this story. What is happening in your toddler's brain after the screen goes off? That is the story nobody is telling you. And today, parenting. IQ gives you the neuroscience that will change how you think about screen time forever, starting with tonight. Before we go into the science, I need to say something directly to you. If you use screens with your toddler, you are not alone. According to a 2023 report from the American Academy of Pediatrics, 93% of children under 3 years old use screens regularly. 93%. That is not a parenting failure. That is the reality of raising a child in the modern world while also being a human being who needs 20 minutes to function. And yet, the guilt is real. Every time you hand over that iPad, you feel it. Every article you half read, every study headline that scared you, every comment from someone who does not have a toddler, and an overflowing inbox and dinner to make. I want you to hear this clearly. The guilt is misdirected. You are feeling guilty about the wrong thing. And today, that changes. Drop "I needed this" in the comments if you have ever handed your toddler a screen just to get 10 minutes of silence. Because what I am about to explain will make you put the guilt down permanently. To understand what is actually happening inside your toddler's brain during and after screen time, you need to understand something that most parenting content in most screen time debates completely ignore. The screen itself is not the neurological event. What happens after the screen goes off, that is the neurological event. In 2019, researchers at the National Institutes of Health released data from the largest brain imaging study ever conducted on American children, the Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development Study, tracking over 11,000 children. What they found stopped the scientific community cold. Children who consumed more than 2 hours of screen time daily showed measurably different prefrontal cortex thickness compared to children who consumed less. But here is what the headlines missed. The difference was not caused by watching the screen. It was caused by what the brain was not doing while watching, and what it was desperately trying to recover from afterward. That recovery is what you are watching when the meltdown happens. Let me show you exactly what is happening inside your toddler's brain from the moment that screen lights up. Think of your toddler's brain like a slot machine. Every time something new appears on the screen, a new color, a new character, a new sound, the brain releases a small burst of dopamine, the reward chemical. And fast-paced children's content, the kind designed specifically to hold a toddler's attention, is engineered to trigger that dopamine release every 3 to 5 seconds. Every 3 to 5 seconds, your toddler is not watching a show. Their brain is pulling the lever of the most perfectly calibrated dopamine delivery system ever designed for a 2-year-old nervous system. This is called rapid reward cycling, and it is the first thing you need to understand. Here's what happens next. While the dopamine is cycling rapidly, a process called cortical underactivation begins in the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for language, emotional regulation, impulse control, and creative thinking. Think of it like this. When the slot machine is running, the rest of the casino goes quiet. The prefrontal cortex, the most important region of your toddler's developing brain, essentially stands down during fast-paced screen content because it does not need to work. The screen is doing everything for it. Research from the University of Alberta published in JAMA Pediatrics confirmed this. Toddlers who consumed fast-paced screen content showed lower scores on executive function tests compared to toddlers who consumed slow-paced or no screen content. Not because the screen made them less intelligent, because the screen never asked them to be intelligent. The brain that is never challenged never builds. Now here is the part that explains the meltdown. When you take the iPad away, The dopamine tap turns off instantly, and the prefrontal cortex, which has been standing down for 20 minutes, is suddenly asked to come back online and manage a nervous system that is now in full dopamine withdrawal. For a 2-year-old brain, that is neurologically impossible to do gracefully. What you see as a tantrum is actually your toddler's brain in a cortisol spike, the stress hormone surging to compensate for the sudden dopamine drop. The meltdown is not manipulation, the meltdown is chemistry. Researchers at University College London call this the post-screen cortisol surge, and their 2021 data showed that cortisol levels in toddlers immediately following screen removal were comparable to cortisol levels measured during moderate physical stress. Your toddler is not being dramatic. Their brain is in genuine distress. Tell me in the comments, does your toddler melt down every single time the screen goes off? Just drop every time or sometimes below? Because your answer tells me exactly which part of this protocol matters most for you. So what do you actually do with this? 3 things? And not one of them requires you to throw the iPad away or become a screen-free household or feel guilty for one more single second. Pillar 1. The transition. Warning protocol. The cortisol surge happens because the transition is sudden. The dopamine system has no time to prepare, the prefrontal cortex has no time to come back online, and the nervous system goes into crisis. The single most research-supported intervention for post-screen meltdown is transition warning, and the science is specific about exactly how it works. Data from the Journal of Developmental Pediatrics shows that toddlers who received a verbal and visual warning 5 minutes before screen removal showed a 47% reduction in post-screen dysregulation compared to toddlers who experienced sudden removal. 47%. The one action starting today, before you take the iPad, kneel to their level, make eye contact, and say clearly, 5 more minutes, and then the iPad goes to sleep. Your brain needs a rest. That phrase, your brain needs a rest, is not just instruction. It is the beginning of interoceptive awareness, the ability to understand their own internal states. You are building a skill, not just ending a session. Pillar 2, the cortisol bridge activity. Here is the part that will completely change your post-screen routine. The cortisol surge after screen removal needs somewhere to go. A nervous system flooded with cortisol cannot simply calm down. It needs a physical discharge pathway, something that uses the body to metabolize the stress chemistry before the prefrontal cortex can come back online. Research from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia identified the most effective post-screen cortisol bridge activities for toddlers aged 1 to 4, and the results were counterintuitive. The most effective bridge is not quiet time. It is not another calmer screen. It is large motor movement, specifically within the first 3 minutes of screen removal. Think jumping, running, dancing, spinning, anything that uses the big muscle groups and gets the body moving before you ask the brain to regulate. The one action starting today. When the screen goes off, immediately offer a physical activity, not as a distraction, as a neurological bridge. The iPad is sleeping now. Let's jump 5 times together. Those 5 jumps are doing more for your toddler's cortisol than any amount of calm down ever could. Pillar 3, the content quality framework. The third pillar is the one that changes everything during screen time, not just after. Not all screen content creates the same neurological impact. Research published in Pediatrics, the Journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics, identified a clear distinction between what researchers call depleting content and enriching content based on the pace of scene changes and the presence of responsive characters. Fast-paced content with scene changes every 3 seconds or less. Depleting triggers rapid dopamine cycling, suppresses prefrontal cortex activity, and increases post-screen cortisol surge intensity. Slow-paced content with scene changes every 8 to 12 seconds, featuring characters who pause, ask questions, and wait for responses. Enriching maintains partial prefrontal engagement, reduces dopamine spike intensity, and produces a measurably calmer transition. The one action starting today, audit the content, not the clock. 20 minutes of slow-paced responsive content is neurologically different from 20 minutes of fast-paced dopamine cycling. The question is never just how long. The question is, what is it doing to the brain while it plays? I want you to think about that meltdown differently tonight. Not as evidence that you gave them too much screen time, not as proof that you made a wrong choice. Think about it as your toddler's brain doing the only thing it knows how to do when 30 minutes of the most perfectly engineered dopamine experience ever created suddenly goes dark. That meltdown is not a character flaw. It is chemistry. And chemistry has solutions. The transition warning, the cortisol bridge, the content audit. 3 things. Not a complete overhaul of your parenting. Not a screen-free household. Not more guilt sitting on top of the guilt you already carry. Just 3 science-backed steps between the screen going off and the meltdown beginning. You are not the problem. You are the solution. And now you have the science to prove it. Tell me in the comments, how old is your toddler right now? Just their age. Because based on exactly where they are developmentally, there is one specific pillar that will make the biggest difference for you this week. The next time you hand your toddler the iPad, you will not feel guilt. You will feel informed. And the next time the screen goes off and the meltdown begins, you will not feel helpless. You will feel prepared. If this gave you something real, watch our next protocol immediately. Stop saying good job. The praise science that's secretly slowing your child's brain. Because the dopamine science you just learned is the exact same system that praise is hijacking. And what you discover there completes this picture entirely. New protocol, every single week. At ParentingIQ, we don't raise children, we architect legacies.